I hear you can hear me, so welcome everybody to this panel. So we're going to have next exciting 1 hour or so on conversations in the topic of workforce development. That's going to be broken down in 2 panels. This first one is, the goal of this conversation is to explore the kind of demystify workforce development from just simple conversations on training, but rather identifying what's the role of workforce development for the ecosystem, for the building of the quantum industry. So we have our distinguished speakers here, panelists. Would you like to make your introductions and tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yeah, my name is Aravind. I'm the Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer of Q-CTRL. I've been with the company 3 years and seen it to grow to almost 150 people. And yeah, I'm a deep tech guy. This is my 3rd startup, 4th startup. I've lost track. But I've been with large companies, small companies, Intel, ASML. I'm a physicist, engineer by training.
I'm John Felbinger. I'm the Deputy Director at QED-C, which is an industry association for companies and laboratories commercializing quantum tech. And one of our committees focuses on workforce, so I brought some of our results today.
Hi, my voice is gone. I'm Joab. I'm here as a VC raising a fund to be dedicated to quantum. But I think for this panel, I'm more of a teacher. I was teaching physics and other educational missions in the past. Lately, mainly physics to non-physicists who are interested in quantum.
Good. Thanks very much, everyone. The first question that we would like to start exploring is the definition of workforce development. Right? So workforce development seems to mean many different things for many different audiences. Is it training? Is it not training? Is it just for community college, or are we talking about the whole spectrum? So I would like you to have a conversation among yourselves, and maybe in the next 5 minutes we will figure out together what we collectively define as workforce development for the quantum industry. In any order.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first as a relative non-expert. Quantum computing has literally evolved as I've been in the industry for the last 3 years. The world is quickly getting to a place where people don't actually have to write circuits, quantum circuits anymore, and writing or doing work in quantum computing is starting to become more and more alike to doing work on classical computing, right? A lot of complexity is being abstracted away, but I don't want to overstate it, that there's still certain nuances that need to be kept in mind. So my definition of workforce development comes down to what is the least amount of training that you need to provide to the workforce in order for them to enable the next generation of quantum computing. Because remember, you train today, it's not like they're immediately necessarily interviewing for jobs, et cetera, but you're looking a few years out. So if you can stare into the industry 3 years down the line, what sort of training is going to be needed for the industry to be able to scale up?
Do we agree with that?
I agree with that. And I would add that within the lens of QED-C, we think about the needs of industry. So there are many players within the ecosystem who focus on things like K-12 education, but that's not providing an immediate input to our industry. So QED-C does not specialize in that policy. Where we have focused, I would say, is on the immediate hiring requirements of our members. And we published a very detailed workforce needs assessment. This was published in IEEE Transactions on Education and characterizes a variety of skills and expertises that the industry is looking to hire. And I think your functional definition is very good. What do you need to have a next generation of quantum computer at market? And the one piece that was missing from your description is the educated consumer. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important for us to engage with the major sectors that we perceive as early adopters to help them become educated about the application of the technology. And this has a particular importance with the government customers who are in many cases first adopters of the technology.
I think I have a bit of a different perspective. So first of all, I know many companies on the software level claim to be able at one point to hide the hardware for the user, for the end user, which is important, and we've seen that happening in classical computers. I still tend to think that with quantum computers, if you don't know what superposition and entanglement really is, you will find it hard to understand why they are different. So there's a certain layer that you will have to teach all the people that are using the computer, much to the same effect that you need to teach them what a transistor or a 0-1 bit is to understand what a computer is and how it's different from analog machine. So in that sense, I think from my perspective, there are three different audiences. One is the kind of people that just need a very high overview, kind of an enrichment lecture on physics, Schrödinger cat, that you get in bars from time to time. Not much more than that. On the other end, you have the technicians and the physicists and the scientists who really gone through academia and done either physics, electrical engineering, and so on, which I think academia is doing a good job with all criticism that we know and we can talk about. But in general, the physicists that come out of universities, they will be good at the lab. I think the layer that is missing are the people who, in the long run, will either start companies, be on a C-level positions, maybe customer support, when you will finish using all the physicists that are being educated in the universities. I think that will happen, not very long from now. And then you have to find a new program to really teach these people something which is not on the one hand, I don't know, a workshop of one day, and on the other hand, it's not the full 5 years physics master degree.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to do, but I think it will be important for the market and also from the perspective of a VC. If you want to see more deal flow of startups, you need this experienced, seasoned, high-tech people who most of them are not physicists, and I don't think they need to be physicists.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. Can I make one last point?
Please.
Quantum is several things. Quantum is quantum computing, quantum sensing, networking, communication, security. And I also think quantum is not quantum mechanics necessarily. I think this industry has over-indexed on physicists in the past. And the thing is, I don't particularly think that everyone entering this particular field has to really understand quantum mechanics. And a lot of, I think there is still, if you segmented the entire field, there will be a certain portion of experts who will be advancing the technology, and those people are very important. And I don't know if they need additional help beyond the training that they get in their natural course of education. But it's really the rest of the 95% that we should think about, right? The engineers who will write the code, the technicians who will actually build these computers, the guys who will operate the assembly lines, the guys who will actually go out and market this stuff, right? And the evangelists, and it's really, that is, to me, is the core part of the workforce. That's the reason why I personally de-emphasize the physics piece of it and overemphasize the rest of it, which is what is quantum all about, right? Which is, what is this technology all about? What's the real world impact it's having? So
just to be sure that we understand what was the core of your proposal for definition, is that, should we say that you think that innovation in the quantum tech space remains at the core of what's needed from the workforce?
I think if you're asking me personally, sorry to touch this. There will be the core of the industry who will advance it, advance the fundamental science of it, and then the necessary education of that will be obtained at world-leading institutions. I think that part is not going to change. What we tend to, at least at Q-Control, what we tend to focus on is really the rest of it. Let's say I'm a machine learning engineer. Maybe I'm an app developer. Maybe I'm a high school student. What does it take for me to get into quantum? What's the minimum education that I need in order to be able to, let's say, go on IBM's website, read some documentation, and start programming a quantum computer, or go on QuEra's website and then read documentation, start programming, your gates.
So, if we're working on hardware, does this have any bear to anybody that actually were building hardware?
You want? Should we go
anyone?
Yeah.
Do you think that this bears anything to anyone that's building hardware?
I think there are multiple tiers of requirement for those developing the hardware. Within QED-C, we had surveyed our members about the role of technicians in the workforce about a year ago. And nearly 90% of the companies said that they have PhDs doing the work that could be trained to skilled technicians. So I think as the industry continues to mature, it's very important to expand beyond our classically trained or quantum trained physicist base and really build a diversified workforce that meets the growing demand for the hardware solutions.
Okay, so as we move on then to next topics, what are the favorite initiatives that you have seen for workforce development? The models that you think that are working, or many of these are actually quite recent, right? But that inspire you if they are not yet producing results.
In Israel, there were several kind of courses that I've seen happening. Some of them also seen similar things in Europe. First of all, there's this kind of ongoing, let's say, going for 6 months, once a week, later afternoon course for engineers that have done defense tech or cyber or anything, teaching them a variety of lectures about the quantum market and about the technologies. There were many of them there. This came usually from the corporate point of view. So there's a corporate that want people like to understand what's the potential of quantum, and then there's kind of a semi-government initiative or an organization like yours that is offering this course. As I said, I was doing more of a physics course. But I think, again, the interest of the corporates is a bit different from growing an entrepreneur that will go through the process of starting a company, because he doesn't have, or she doesn't have, this organization to support her when she has an interest. So they find themselves a bit alone in that process. And I think they need some external help, both in terms, boot camps of data science. They cost quite a lot. So at around, $10,000 a course. So something like that will happen also in quantum. And I think it should look a bit different from the regular course that is already happening. And there's a fear factor, right? It's very different from AI. AI, at the end of the day, is statistics. And it's easier to go through than really understanding quantum something. Technology, physics, mechanics, doesn't matter. So I think you need to take people by the hand and tell them you should not be afraid. It's okay, it's possible. You can do it.
Jonathan, we probably have a big picture of everything that's happening in the US, or a lot of what's happening in the US. What catches your eye?
I think it's important to look at multiple scales. For example, backstage, we were talking about engaging quantum-adjacent disciplines and developing a base level of understanding to control the quantum systems, to program the quantum systems. And you can do this, for example, through curricular guidelines for computer science, which IEEE is currently working on refreshing. At the same time, I think when we talk about education, it's important to think in terms of outcomes. And when we talk about education from an industry perspective, that means job placements. So from that perspective, some of the most successful programs I'm seeing are very localized, responding to the specific needs of their communities. Thinking of last month I was in Montana, where the university and the state school are coordinating on 2-year and 4-year programs to meet the specific technician and scientist needs of that community.
Lots of photonics there, right?
And their placement rate in some of these programs is 100%. And there is a real risk that if we take a top-down approach, there could be some saturation in the trainees. And then there may be some distribution.
Your top-down approach means?
I think historically, if we look at the 90s and the doubling of funding in the US NIH in the life sciences sector, there are now many very well-trained neuroscientists and life scientists working in completely different careers. And that can be valuable, but it might not be the type of intervention we're trying to make to respond to the market demand.
So bottom up, you mean from starting from the needs?
Generally, there's a localization to the education and the specific industry requirements.
Gotcha. What do you think?
Yeah, so we have because we work for a commercial software company, we wanted to see if it is possible to contribute to the growth of the global quantum developer base, while at the same time making this a viable business for us. That was the problem definition. When we did some soul searching, we found that there was a big gap between YouTube type videos where people go to, to get a quick refresher on what entanglement might be, and academic papers, which typically need a PhD to read and understand and digest. So we hired a world famous children's educator who had done a lot of work in pedagogy on how to reduce complex concepts into simple concepts. And we came up with maybe a 20 to 30 hour course called Black Opal. As I speak, Black Opal has 20,000 users across the world. And the approach that we have taken has been fairly localized, as you mentioned. So if you go to a particular, maybe the Chicago Quantum Exchange or maybe Wyoming, they may have specific initiatives and they may have a particular requirement for a 1-credit course for undergraduates. So that fills the requirements perfectly. On the other hand, the NQCC in the UK wanted to sponsor a program that graduates from the United Kingdom could take and be ready for the quantum revolution. At the extreme end, one of the markets that we have found that's extremely suitable for this is India. How do you educate in a country with 1.5 billion people, who out of which maybe 200 million end up in technology, out of which maybe 20 million may end up in quantum in the future? How do you educate 20 million people, and especially those who can't pay $10,000 a course, right? So, and the solution was having a SaaS do-it-yourself tool with beautiful, easy to navigate interfaces, but perhaps with some localization. Perhaps, the thing is, anything that's SaaS that runs in a browser, there are translation tools. So people in Japan could use this, in Korea could use this, etc. So now, we are already talking to multiple states in India, and we're expanding this out. But also, we are talking to people in Japan and even in China, and this is education. So
do you think that it's important to find a way to standardize kind of industry-wide recognition certification? This is standardization. Do you think it's important, or?
So I feel like what we're doing is one part of the solution. There's actually several others that, of course, we can't teach people on how to assemble control electronics.
Right.
That would be beyond the scope of what we do. But what we're teaching is with a very specific goal, which is starting from scratch. What are the basic concepts that you need in order to read documentation and program a quantum computer? So it's a fixed curriculum that we can customize depending on whether you're a university or whether you're industry or so. And we have found success with corporates who are saying, hey, I would love to have maybe 1,000 people in our company know what quantum computing is, and I would love to take them through a course. But short of sending them to a $10,000 executive course, we haven't found something that's a little bit more scalable. So we have a solution that costs them maybe $100 per employee per semester type thing. So it's scalable.
So to that point, maybe how do you think that, are we identifying really the workforce development needs of the industry, or do we see most initiatives being done by universities or other organizations that are not communicating and not consulting with the companies? Because the way I see workforce development is, it's professionalizing, right? You're expecting that person to be employed. It's not just to grow their knowledge. So do you feel like there's enough conversation with the industry and with the potential employers? Do you all feel that, or is enough being done or not?
I can go first.
Yeah.
In the US, it's been really hard just because the providers of the education, I mean, that market is extremely scattered, and it's not localized. It's not scalable for us to go every single place. Having said that, there are some pockets of excellence. For example, I was just talking to several faculty at Texas A&M University, and they're interested in, and this is a huge school, 60,000 people, and they're very interested in bringing quantum education to undergraduate, just almost making it part of the undergraduate curriculum, perhaps as an elective to begin with, and then eventually just baking this into the core. And that's one example of how, and what they're trying to do is they're looking at our curriculum and aligning it with their physics curriculum, computer science curriculum, and they're doing a bit of massaging there. But it's a one-off. I have to say this isn't happening at scale yet, and we have to still find a sustainable model. Perhaps work with the state education boards, and then maybe diffuse that out. We still haven't found a solution.
Joab, how did you decide the main topics that you would target and people that you would target for your education activities?
Well, to be honest, it started with just a group of friends and acquaintances who just wanted to know, some of them just what quantum mechanics is, and some of them just what the quantum market is about. So ex-cyber people, people that came from computer science, some philosophers, and we just gathered in a room adopting what Leonard Susskind is doing with his concept of theoretical minimum. We started there, but then the curiosity is getting bigger and bigger, and the fear is getting lower. So people are daring to do more. So they wanted to understand, the Grove algorithm and the Deutsch machine. And suddenly, as I said, it's happening for almost 4 years. Not all the people are coming, continuously, but some of them are. And I must say, like, it took me a while, but there's a guy who's not an engineer, not a physicist, but at the end point, I've done a matchmaking, and I took him to a professor in Weizmann, and they're now considering starting a company together. And before that, he was in, fintech, in these kind of things, completely away from deep tech or hardware or anything else. And I told him, look, I think if you have a good professor and a good CTO who's a postdoc of the professor, there are some advantages. There are also disadvantages for not being a scientist. But I think in some cases, it's even better that you're detached from the lab, because he's great at raising money, which is no less important, right? He's great at managing people. He managed a company of 1,000 people. So of course, we want a CEO who knows everything, right? Who's great at managing people, a great scientist, a great person to raise money. But the truth of the matter is you don't have this kind of people, mostly. So I think this is a nice compromise, because we want to see the market growing. We want to see more companies. I think the numbers are, maybe I'm wrong, but 500 companies in quantum computing, in general, quantum technologies, right, and 65,000 in AI. So there's a gap to be closed, right? Not immediately, but slowly.
So according to QED-C's analysis of workforce development initiatives, would that type of initiative be considered workforce development, or is it like a broader education, or?
Yeah, I think we take a fairly inclusive approach to it, which includes on-ramps to the industry that may occur mid-career for skilled professionals. So some on-ramps that we haven't discussed yet might include, for example, exposure to open source ecosystems, or online training is a fantastic example, and there are commercial as well as open source approaches to this. I think we generally look at it quite inclusively, with the caveat that as an organization, we leave the K-12 work to other institutions.
Gotcha. And how do you see the fact that this market is global, right? So we were just discussing training people all across the globe, and the lack of companies, this movement. How do you think that it plays with the workforce development efforts? Like, are you scared that sometimes we are training too many people? There's not many companies. You're training a lot, but they are in one place, but the companies are somewhere else. How does it go?
The factor that is playing into our hand is that quantum is truly a flat technology. It's going to be one of those things that will flatten the world. just like smartphones flatten the world, now AI is everywhere, quantum's going to be everywhere as well. Every major government is concerned about the benefits that quantum can offer, but also the threats that quantum may pose if they are not catching up on the ramp. So thankfully, we are seeing major investments from multiple governments, and all of those. I think one of the places where a lot of that money will go will be in education, right? And we are already starting to see it, and so that part is going to happen. It's almost, it's like this. You can walk into any part of the world, and you can be talking to people who don't know much about quantum, who don't know how to go about it. The very first conversation you can have is education, right? It's a very easy topic to have, and it's very easy to ask them, hey, I know you've heard of quantum, but how are you approaching it from a workforce development, education perspective? Are you ready for quantum when it happens? What might happen if the ChatGPT moment happens in quantum, as defined as maybe a large-scale quantum advantage, right? I know reality will be a little bit more nuanced than that, but it's still good to sort of pose that as like a contrasting question. What might, let us say today that the ChatGPT moment happened in quantum. Is your country ready for it? Is your workforce ready for it, et cetera? So it's a good forcing function.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I agree to that, but we still have to bear in mind that most of the governments see quantum as a strategic affair. So at the moment, I don't see it touching the lower levels of education, but at one point it may happen that you get a Chinese wall in between the US and China, or I don't know, maybe Russia. I think that may happen as it happened in other sensitive technologies in the past, like supercomputers in the 90s, or of course nuclear in the 1950s or so.
Yeah, right. Honestly, the first place we are seeing that happen is in India, in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. So it's a state of 72 million people, and we are working directly with the Vocational Skilling Development Corporation there. And we just did our first cohort, and now we are going into the second semester, which should be about 20,000 students or so. And what they've said is, if this is successful and we have good outcomes, we're looking at potentially 100,000 students go through. So it's crazy. They have 37 million students registered over the course of the last 10 years or so. So the scales there are quite immense. And what we're seeing is the beginning of a revolution. Because when those students graduate with their credentials, what's the first question they're going to ask? Where's my job? And who are they going to push? Their local government. And so in parallel, we are also working with their local governments to set up quantum centers and create employment. And it's also very logical. If they don't want to build their own data centers or supercomputing centers, et cetera, what they do next is set up partnerships with local industry, right? Go talk to your local EV battery manufacturer, and are they thinking enough in terms of materials development, et cetera? This is what forces innovation at a grassroots level. So we're seeing this unfold right in front of us. Yeah.
Let me stop being greedy. Do we have burning questions from the audience?
So you mentioned about educating, but like the financial community does seem to be very educated about what it is that quantum is and what type of investments are there. And literally for many of us who come here to learn about it, it takes like more than a year to understand how it works in order for you to put down hundreds of millions of dollars of clients' money to work. And I feel like it's very difficult to do. I didn't take linear algebra. I had to go start taking linear algebra to understand just how the software side of it works. I'm wondering what your experience is.
So I assume when you're speaking about the...
I apologize. Could you just quickly repeat the question so that it's on the recording and then answer?
Okay. The question was about the financial professionals who need to know how to invest the money and don't know linear algebra and how they can learn about it. You said it takes more than a year, right?
Yeah, to educate about like what it is.
Yeah.
So when you invest in something, you have to understand how it works.
Yeah. So I can say what I'm doing, and again, should give the credit to Professor Zaskin from Stanford, who started
Really
it.
slow.
And I think it's possible. So the idea is you don't need the whole course in linear algebra, and you can do this theoretical minimum. So really to understand entanglement and two-level system in quantum mechanics, you can do vectors, like I think most people do in K-12 if they do a little bit of mathematics. I teach really from scratch. Like I always start my lecture and I'm saying to the students, if you forgot why 2 + 2 is 4, please ask. And most of them ask questions. And the minimum that I found is like, I think today I can give 10 lectures of 2 hours, by the end of which you will understand entanglement really in a deeper way, or the deepest way that you need to understand quantum. I think most of the investors today, and again, I'm nowadays going around family offices, institutional investors, because we're raising money for a fund. Most of them have this fear to even open the discussion, so they're judging everything from the perspective of the money involved. So how much money did other VCs put in? How much money is coming from the government? What is the valuation of companies? And when you go into the due diligence of specific, let's say, hardware companies, they find it extremely difficult. And to be honest, it's not even that you can find a professor for each and every due diligence, because the professors are also very focused on what they do. So they will be involved with some of the companies that you're trying to do due diligence on. So I don't expect investors to be quantum physicists, not at all. But I think if they want to go into this market, because it's an undervalued market, they should go in, they need to put some investment in terms of time, as they did with AI. So it's more difficult, but still possible.
Joab, do we have
Yes, so we have a few questions that have come in through the QR code. The first one is, has Black Opal been used to educate the technical workforce at Q-CTRL?
Yes, many of us have taken the course. Yeah.
Thanks. The next one is, how should organizations go about upskilling their engineers? What is your experience?
I tend to think the minimal group is like 5, maybe 10. Like you cannot do that, take 2 people and tell them you're responsible for quantum in the company. I think it will not work. It will just dissolve naturally and will never happen. So I think a group of 5 probably get someone who used to do it in a different company to start this group or manage it. I think that's the beginning.
I think it's also because of my accent. The question is about upskilling, so skills are not upscaling.
No.
Skilling.
Like, how do you get to improve the skills of the engineers so that they get to quantum computing?
I understood.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that was the answer, yeah.
Okay.
Like, you cannot do that for 100 people. You cannot do it for 2. You start with a 5, and then it will go around.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually do like little explainers internally, and this is completely not standardized, but just enough for us to be able to have an intelligent conversation around it. What is a variational quantum eigensolver? What does QAOA mean? So you know, our CEO is fairly well known in the community, and we usually have him or our head of research, or you know, we have various people who are leading scientists, have them deliver informal, maybe not talks or brown bags, but once in a while we'll just even putting a couple of paragraphs on Slack, right, internally. Hey, I'm struggling with this concept. Can you please help me? You know, what is the hard NP problem, etc. Just having them do internal explainers moves the ball forward. Yeah. Well, how does it work at QuEra?
For education?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys if you have people new to the industry that are trying to learn how this stuff works.
Well, sometimes I run that myself. I have run some sessions training our HR.
Yeah.
We are actually very focused on the hardware. I think that for us, what we see is that understanding the hardware is very important, even for doing applications. I think that this co-design idea where the understanding of what are the algorithms, what do they look like, but also how does this really work and what are the limitations? Why doesn't it work? Why can't I do more? Right? So for us, it's very important. So we think that's really crucial. But that's to upskill folks from kind of the non-traditional, non-technical paths. To which maybe I will be greedy and leave the last question for the panel here, which is, if you look at the majority of the industry, you don't see many entry-level jobs. Right, so either you're expecting someone that is experienced from some other field to be trained enough to understand this space and join, but usually those people are, they have life constraints, right? They don't have much time. They are experienced. They probably have families and other challenges in life. Or they are young, but then they don't have the experience, so there is no entry-level jobs for them. So how do we navigate this? The fact that we need a bigger workforce, we need more people in the industry, but at the same time, everybody wants someone that is already brilliant at what they are doing.
Can you define what an entry-level job might be, like an entry-level technician?
Any job that would take someone that is just out of their, let's say, undergraduate or community college work.
I think employers generally look for proven or low-risk candidates, and right now the dynamics of the labor market support that. As hiring becomes tighter, I think the importance of experiential-based learning, internships, externships, lab experience in that traditional university education become all the more important, such that you have demonstrable skills that you can apply on day one.
Well, it's an illness of the industry, the high-tech industry. Everybody is looking for top-notch ninjas, 5 years in this, 10 years in that. It's a privilege of a young market because you still have enough people. But as it grows, as more companies raise more money, I think you'll have to see people in entry jobs given a chance. And usually, I think, because I was a CEO, if you give a chance to a young person, you get much more loyalty. And in high tech, being a very capitalistic workforce, there's not much loyalty, right? You get a better offer from a different company, they make your salary go up, people leave. I think if you get a young boy and you give him the first chance, when he does become, or she does become experienced, they will be more loyal to the company. That let them start.
I love that. So the requirements for a lot of experience is a privilege of a young market. I remember that one.
Yeah.
Aaron, anything on your end?
No, I mean, we hire people fresh from a PhD, but they have to come from the right program, and their work has to align with what we do. I was just talking to one of the PhD students of Scott Aronson at UT, and how he is thinking about he's about to graduate, and he's here at the conference. I'm not going to name names, but I'm like, how do you pick where you end up? And for him, he's very clear he doesn't want to be a professor. He wants to look at the industry, and he's done algorithms-oriented work, but he's not quite sure where he's going to end up. But the one thing that he's very sure about is he wants his PhD topic to align fairly closely with whichever group he ends up in. So I think the group matters more, the size of the team and whether they're doing the work. But this is for a specialist. But I think at the absolute other end of the spectrum, there's opportunities for, sales engineers, for marketing engineers, even technicians. I think all of those opportunities exist. But right now, I agree that given that the industry is a little small, we can afford to be a little bit more selective. That may not always be the case as it scales.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
So to wrap up, the next 3 to 5 years, there will be more jobs, one by one, just opinion. Will there be more jobs in applications, theory, software, on hardware, or on company operations, HR, sales, etc.? What do you think?
I think applications and solutions, mostly because that's the last mile. being able to tie the hardware, tie the compute that's coming out and solve real problems in the industry, closing that last mile gap is going to be the most important, yeah.
I hate to speculate, but QED-C publishes a list of job openings across our companies and come back for the data.
Yeah.
I think all of them, if we're not all very wrong and chose the wrong profession, then all of them will grow.
Oh, okay, like gun in the head.
HR.
HR.
Yeah, exactly.
Very well. I think that we can wrap up then, Jerome.
Yes, thank you very much to the first panel. Please join me in thanking the members of the panel.